I should wait. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's start. Let me share my desktop with you guys. And let me see if I can pull up this chat window so I know who's chatting. There we go. Move this up here. Okay. What I like to do with these few shlokas, there's just a few, is to read them with the Sanskrit and break them down word for word and go to the meaning. Just for your information, the source of this, these transliterations and the meanings are from this website here, Bhagavad Gita Bhagavad-Gita.us. So if you want to refer to, it's a great website, and I've listed some of the material from there for my lecture. And then also what I'd like to do is I always like to look at Sant Gnaneshwar's Gita, known all over the world, and I have a wonderful book I'll be reading from that as well. It's a fantastic commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by Saint Gnaneshwar of Maharashtra. So we'll look at that as well, okay? So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, shlok 17, very famous shlok. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkhaha. So let's look at the breakdown. Yukta. Yukta is to join or regulated. It's the same word as yoga, which is yoked or united or regulated or controlled. Yukta. Ahar. Ahar, you know, is nutrition. Vihar is recreation. Yukta is regulated. Cheshtasya. So someone who works hard at something, someone who works for maintenance, someone who attempts to work at something, cheshtasya, of belonging to that person. Karmasu, karma is duties. And then again you see yukta. Swapna, avabodhasya. You have your two words, swapna and avabodhasya. But if you've, I think Atulji has covered sandhi, when you have an a sound at the end of a word and an a sound at the beginning of the next word, they're joined together to make an a. So swapna avabodhasya becomes swapnavabodhasya, becomes one word, and you see the diacritical mark there. Yogaha, practice of yoga, not just hatha yoga, not just the asanas, but yoga, all the limbs of yoga. Bhavati becomes dukkhaha, pains become diminished. So he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, yogo bhavati dukkhaha. So he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pain by practicing the yoga system. So that is one of the most famous stanzas of the Bhagavad Gita. I think it would make a really nice assignment. I think you have an assignment that's due at the end of class and at the end of this semester. So this is a really, really good one. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmastu, yukta swapnavabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkhaha. So this is setting up the background for which is chapter 17, a cluster of shlokas that I'd like to share with you. So let's move along. And for these shlokas, I'm going to also refer to the Gnaneshwari, which is Gnaneshwar's commentary on the Gita from several hundred years ago. So ayuhu, sattva, balarogya, sukha, priti, vivardhanaha, rasyaha, snigdhaha, sthira, hridya, ahara, satvika, priya. So ayu means lifespan or life. We know that word from Ayurveda, ayu. Sattva is existence. Bala is strength. Bala is strength. And then arogya. So together bala and arogya makes the word, compound word, balarogya. Arogya means health. Rog means disease. Arog is health. Sukha is happiness. We learned about Sukhayu and Dukhayu. I want some of these words to ring a bell and become familiar with, familiar to you, especially those of you who don't have a background in Sanskrit. Some of these words should start to become familiar. For the rest of you who do speak another Indian language, they're part of your regular vocabulary. Priti. Priti is satisfaction. It can also mean love. Priti. Vivardhanaha. Vivardhana means to increase, increasing. Rasyaha. Rasa. We learned about rasa dhatu. Rasa is that juiciness, that juice. Rasyaha. Snigdha. We learned about the word snigdha, if you remember that, as one of the properties. Snigdhaha is of fatty or clinging is another word of snigdhaha, another meaning. Sthira. Sthira means to established or solid or everlasting or enduring. Sthira. Sthiraha. Hridyaha, pleasing to the heart. Ahara, food. Sattvika, in the mode of purity or goodness. And priyaha is palatable. So foods dear to those in the mode of goodness, meaning foods dear to those who are sattvic, people who have a sattvic mana, who are of a sattvic nature. Foods that are dear to those people increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. And by fatty, we know when we think of juicy and fatty, we think of full of rasa, things that invigorate rasa dhatu, things that are full of the nectar of life. By fatty, we don't think about, in this context, it's not kapha increasing, yes, not fatty in terms of animal fats, such as from meat. That's not what they're talking about. That's not what Sri Krishna is talking about. So let me just go to Dnyaneshwar's Gita, Dnyaneshwar's rendition of the Gita, and let's talk about this shloka a little bit. In his discussion, I'm just going to read what he says because it's very interesting. He's written in Marathi, but we don't have time for the Marathi. That's also beautiful. But I'll read you the English translation of his discussion of this shlok. He says, those fortunate people who are endowed with the quality of goodness are attracted to sweet foods, those which are juicy, sweet, succulent, and ripe, not too large, soft to the touch, tasty, and pleasing to the tongue. Food which is full of juice and at the same time soft, moist, and which cannot be spoiled by heating. Which is also small in size, but, like the Guru's word, powerful in its effect, so that even a small quantity of it will satisfy. Those who have the quality of goodness, like all foods which are not only sweet to the taste, but also beneficial to the health. These are the properties of the foods which promote goodness and which protect and renew life. When the clouds of such good food rain down into a person's body, the river of his life flows more fully day by day. O wise Arjuna, this is the food which maintains goodness, just as the sun sustains the well-being of the day. All these foods are a source of strength to the body and the mind. How then could there be any place for disease in those who eat them? When a person eats this kind of food, his body is fortunate enough to enjoy good health. All the activities of his body result in prosperity, and happiness becomes his constant companion. This is the effect of pure food on the body. It brings happiness both within and without. Now I will tell you about those foods which are preferred by those of a passionate nature, meaning those who are rajasic. So Sri Krishna is almost a domino effect. You are what you eat. If you eat good food, if you maintain health, then you're naturally happy. I think it's just lovely. And when you're happy, you're not distracted by your disease. And we talked about in block 1 the 4 goals of life, right? Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. When you take care of your health, your body doesn't become a living prison. You're not shackled down by disease. You're healthy. You don't have to think about attending to the body, and you can focus your attention on spirituality, because eventually the aim of life is moksha, is that union with the Supreme. So when you take care of your body by eating good foods, in return, your body becomes a vessel fit to take you across that ocean of life and death. That is the beauty of ahar. So let's, we did this one, okay? So let's look at the next shloka, Bhagavad Gita 17:9. Katva, amla, lavanatya ushna. It's hard to read when the sandhi is broken, but they're doing it so we can learn from it. Tikshna, ruksha, vidahinaha, ahara, rajasasyeshtha, dukkha, shokamaya pradaha. So we have, let's look at the sandhi here. Katu, we know, is bitter. Now, there is some discrepancy with katu and tikshna in text. Sometimes katu is meant to be bitter, and in some texts, katu means pungent. In this case, they're talking about bitter. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes in the text that you read, when you read the original Sanskrit, there's some discrepancy. Katu, bitter, and amla, sour. So when you join them together, it becomes katvamla, because the u and the u sound and the amla becomes a verb, katvamla. That's a sandhi there, the joining of two words, katvamla. Lavana is salty. Ati means ati ushna. Ati means extremely. That's a prefix, an important prefix in Sanskrit. When you see the word ati, and also in other Indian languages, ati means excessive. Ushna is hot. Ati ushna becomes atyushna, A-T-Y-U-S-H-N-A. So that Sanskrit has a lot of these long words that you see in the original Devanagari script that you have to break down like this, like they're doing. So they've made lavarnyatyushna, they've made it one word. It's lavarna ati ushna. Tikshna is pungent. Ruksha is dry. Remember, some of these, we studied the 20 opposing characteristics of the three doshas, and we talked about these snigdha, ushna, ruksha. So these words should be coming back to you. Ruksha is dry. Vidahinaha. Daha means to burn. Vidahinaha is burning. Ahara, rajasasya. Whenever you see the sya, S-Y-A, at the end of a word, it means it's like an apostrophe S in English. It's belonging to. So rajasasya means meaning that which belongs to someone who is rajasic. Ishtaha is favorable or palatable or preferable. Ishtaha, I'm sorry. Dukkha is distress. Shoka is misery or grief. Amaya is disease, because remember, ama is toxins, right? So amaya is disease. Pradaha, I'm sorry, causing. So foods that are too bitter, too salty, too sour, hot, pungent, dry, and burning. These foods are dear to those in the mode of passion, meaning in those who have a predominance of rajas in their bodies and minds. So such foods eventually catch up to you, right? And they cause distress, misery, and disease. Maybe you can get away with some of these foods when you're young, but eventually, even in your young age, they can cause disease, misery, distress. And let's look at what Sant Jnaneshwar has to say about this. People who are rajasic, okay? You guys, I'm assuming you learned about sattva, rajas, and tamas. I think you did in Sankhya, and I think you learned about it already. You guys are in block 2, so you guys know. So people who are rajasic like food which is deadlier and more bitter than the Kalakuta poison. It's a poison. There's a story in the Puranas about it. I won't get into that. They like food which is sour and which burns more fiercely than lime. And I think in this context he means lime as in not like limes off a tree, but I think the caustic kind of lime chemical. I'm not sure. It is filled with as much salt as the water needed to make dough. A passionate person likes extremely salty foods, and in terms of hot seasoning, eating this food is like swallowing fire. It gives out such hot steam that a candle could be lit from it. This is the kind of hot food that a passionate person likes. He eats food so pungent that it could pierce rocks, though it passes through him without causing any injury. He likes food that is drier than ashes, and he enjoys the sting of it on his tongue. He enjoys food that he has to grind between his teeth. Even though the ingredients of this food are already pungent, he adds mustard on top of it, so that when he eats it, heat passes through his mouth and nose. Okay, I have to be honest. There are times where I put hot sauce on things, and I just remembered that it just reminds me of myself putting hot, Tabasco on stuff. Just the visuals in the Gita are so, in the Jnaneshwari and in the Gita are just so wonderful. Anyway, he loves food which is so highly seasoned that it would repel the heat of fire. Not being satisfied with this, his appetite runs riot, and he would even eat flaming fire. As a result, he is always in a feverish heat and cannot rest either on the ground or in bed. The drinking glass never leaves his mouth. What he has eaten is not food. It is a stimulant he has taken which arouses in him sleeping serpents in the form of disease. Disease and trouble arise in him and rival each other. In this way, the food of a passionate quality results in suffering. O Arjuna, I have now described the food of a passionate kind and its many effects. I will now tell you the kind of food which is preferred by those of a dark nature. Don't let it fill you with disgust. So, I wish I could have time to read you the Marathi. You do lose some of this guy did a good job, this author, but you do lose some of the beauty of the language, of any language, when you translate it into a different one. So it's always entertaining to read the Jnaneshwari too, because the examples are so relatable that sometimes we see, though we don't want to admit it, we see ourselves in those examples, which is good because it's a good wake-up call, right? None of us is perfect, so it makes us think about ourselves. And he points out such human behavior, and that this behavior doesn't change across centuries or across geography. It is just human nature that's plain and simple around the world, and it passes through all time. So can anyone have any questions before we move on to the next shlok? Okay. I think we only did, yeah. Let's talk about the food that is that you see when you have food that is enjoyed by a tamasic person. Okay, ready? Yata yamam, gatarasam, puti, parushitam chayat, paryushitam chayat. Uchishtam api chamedhyam bhojanam tamasa priyam. So this has a lot of different concepts in it, cultural concepts woven in. Yatayamam, food which is cooked 3 hours before being eaten. So this is a really famous definition in the Gita. that anything sitting around, back in the day they had no refrigeration, anything sitting around for more than 3 hours was considered impure. You already start having decomposition in that food. You already start building up toxins, building up ama. It's considered stale. So food has to be eaten within 3 hours of being cooked. Very, very famous concept from within the Bhagavad Gita. And a lot of, most people in India, they know about this. It's just it's a cultural sort of concept that's there. Gata rasam. Gata means that which is left or that which is gone. Gata is a past, sort of past tense. Rasam, that from which the rasa has gone off, it's drained off. That which, because the rasa is gone, is therefore rendered tasteless. Gata rasam, tasteless. Puti, bad smelling. Paryushitam, decomposed, decayed, rotting, such as rotting flesh. Cha means and, also. Yat, that which. There's yat and there's tat. So they're used kind of together. That which, almost like this and that. Uchishtam, remnants of food eaten by others. This is a really, it's probably pan-cultural, uchishtam. The word uchishtam in Sanskrit means that which has been eaten by others. So in Marathi, we use the word ushta, which is a corruption of uchishtam, ushta. In Hindi, we say juta. That's something that someone else has had a bite out of. That's very taboo in Indian culture. Even to this day, this Gita was 5,000 years ago. Even to this day, people don't share food. They're very particular. I remember growing up, if I took rice from the middle, if we're all sitting at the dinner table, suppose, and I took, and this happens in most cultures, but it's very Indian too. If you take like dal from the middle of the table, from the serving bowl, and you let that ladle touch your plate, my parents would have a fit. They would say, okay, you know what, that doesn't go back into the main serving bowl. You have to get a new ladle for the soup. So if it touches your plate, which is uchishta, then you can't contaminate the main bowl of dal with that same spoon. People don't eat off of each other's plates. People don't share food. Food is considered very personal. And it's different in different parts of the world. In some parts of the world, people all sit around one big plate and eat together. That's a different cultural concept. In that context, it's a concept of sharing and unity. But in the Indian concept, that doesn't happen. So different ways of looking at it. But in this context, that's considered uchishta, something that's eaten by others. I remember, when my sisters and I, we would have lollipops, and we'd each have a different flavor, and we'd want to taste the other kid's lollipop, other sister's lollipop. Oh, I have grape, you have cherry, let's trade. I would get a look from my parents. That's disgusting, you guys can't do that. That's uchishta, that's ushta, they would say in Marathi. So I hope I've elaborated enough on that. Api is as well also. Cha means and. Amedhyam, that which cannot be touched. Untouchable. Bhojanam is a meal or eating. Tamasa priyaha, dear to one who is tamasic. So food prepared more than 3 hours before being eating. Food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. When you see mode of darkness, that means tamas. When you see mode of passion, that means rajas. And when you see mode of goodness, that means sattva. So let's talk about let's look at what Sant Dnyaneshwar has to say. Let's see. Can you break down the word yatayamam? Uchishta means remnants of others' food. Yes. Right. When we eat from someone else, their karma and gunas come into us. They're right. Absolutely. Their vibrations, so to speak, come into us. Even when someone cooks for us, their vibrations come to us. That's why food has to be always made with love and with mantras and a proper environment, not with anger. And this is another very important concept. We should also eat remnants of sadhus and acharyas and great personalities. That is not contraindicated in the scriptures. If a saint or self-realized sadhu leaves something behind and we partake in some of that, that is considered a blessing because his vibrations or her vibrations come into us. And similarly, when we offer to Krishna, there's a beautiful shloka we should talk about before the class is over, and it's not, unfortunately, on my paper here, about how to offer to Krishna or your personal deity. When that food is blessed by Krishna, we imagine that he is taking a bite of it and leaving the remnants for us to take. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. Let me talk about what Sant Dnyaneshwar has to say about yatayamam. The person of a dark nature doesn't think that decaying food will do him any harm, just as a buffalo will eat mash. He will eat in the afternoon food that was cooked in the morning, and he will even go so far as to eat it the next day. Oops. They didn't have refrigerators back then, right? He also eats food which is either half-cooked or burned or which has no flavor. If something is well-cooked or succulent, he doesn't consider it food. If he happens to be given food, he will leave it until it rots, as a tiger does. Or he will take food that is several days old and has lost its flavor, which is dried up, rotten, and full of worms. His children, this is interesting, his children knead this into a mass with their hands, or he sits down with his wife and family to eat from the same dish. After he has eaten this impure food, he feels that he has not had a good meal. After he has eaten this impure food, he feels that he has had a good meal, but the sinner is still not satisfied. Then see what happens. He eats substances which are forbidden and which are sinful and full of evil. He uses impure water and unsuitable dishes. All this serves to increase his eagerness for the food of the quality of darkness. O Arjuna, such is the taste of these people of darkness, and it isn't long before it bears its consequences. As soon as this unholy food touches his lips, he is liable to commit sin. Moreover, what he eats cannot be called food, for he is filling his body with suffering. Why should a person want to experience having his head cut off or walking into fire? You should realize how this person suffers. The Lord says, O Arjuna, it isn't necessary to describe the consequences of eating food of this dark nature. So anyway, that is what is said by Sant Dnyaneshwar. Let's talk about prasad, because I really like the points that Monica G is making in the chat here. And I'm just scrolling up a little bit. Let's talk about one way to offer food. Okay, so we have here the very famous mantra that Monica G put up here. Pranaya swaha, Om apanaya swaha, Om vyanaya swaha, Om udanaya swaha, Samanaya swaha, Brahmane swaha. That is a way to purify food and If you notice, all the sub doshas, or not sub doshas, the the 5 subdivisions of Vata are listed: Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. There is another very famous shloka from the Bhagavad Gita. Let me write it down for you. Patram, and I'm not going to do the diacritical marks. Pushpam, Phalam, Toyam. If you Google this, you'll see the shlok. Patram, Pushpam, Phalam, Toyam. Yome bhaktya prayachasi. Tadaham bhakti uparatam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So it is, Lord Krishna says, even if I don't require much, I don't require fancy sacrifices, I don't require you to give me elaborate dishes. All I want is your love. That's what Krishna says. He's hungry for your love. And he says, patram, even a leaf, pushpam, even a flower, phalam, a fruit, toyam, even a sip of water, drop of water. Yome bhaktya prayachasi, that which you give to me with bhakti. Tadaham bhakti upuratam ashnami prayatatmanaha. I accept that. I accept it with pleasure, with love. And when we offer our food, or when we're cooking and we offer that to Sri Krishna, and when I say Krishna, I mean, Krishna is my deity of choice, Rama is my deity of choice, Shiva is, but I'm not going to impose that on all of you. Whoever your God is, your personal God, when you offer that to that divinity, you actually purify that food, because you're changing the vibrations of that food. You're transforming ordinary food into something divine. So I encourage you to, before you eat or when you cook, offer that food and make it prasad, and make it the remnants of God. Because when you eat that food, it's very healing. It's a medicine. It's no longer food, it's divine. It's a nectar. It's an amrit, as we say in Sanskrit. Idam Naivedyam Shri Tulsi Patram Om Krishnaya Namaha. I offer Tulsi as Naivedya, offered to Krishna. So that is kind of the and one more point I want to make is, when we offer food to God, there's someone asked my Guruji once, why should we offer food to God? Because God created everything, and what does He gain? If He created the world, who are we to offer Him a flower or a leaf? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not ours. He created it. Why are we offering it to Him? That's a farce. And the way the Guruji described it is that the example is when you, if you're a parent and you are the sustainer of your household, you bring home the bacon, not literally, but you bring home the money and you buy the groceries. But if your child were to give you a small piece of candy out of love, doesn't it melt your heart? Even though you bought the candy, you own everything in that house, but when your own child goes into the fridge and makes you like a sandwich, or brings you breakfast in bed, or gives you something small, even though ultimately you are the owner of all of that in the house, doesn't it make you happy? So similarly, with that bhakti bhav, if we give something to Lord Krishna and say, I know this is yours, it's not mine to offer to you, it's yours, but still I offer it to you, I think about you. Even that is enough to transform that food into a divine medicine. So it's all love. Brahmarpanam, Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. Yes, what Rita is mentioning, this is something we grew up singing before our meals too. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhinaha. So that's chapter 4, verse 24. I don't think we have time to talk about it. There's so much to talk about. But these, if you look at the chat and read it one more time, there are nice things that everyone is suggesting that we can look at in our free time and read. So I hope I covered quite a bit of ground here. You know, the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful source for picking shlokas that you can use for your final project. And I encourage you to look at the Gita, 700 shlokas with so many topics and so much related to Ayurveda. After all, Krishna is Dhanvantari, so there's a lot related to health and mental health in the Gita. So I encourage you to look at the Gita as a source. You can pick something from Charak Samhita or whatever, but we can start with the Gita as well. Any questions? I love this chat discussion. Because I'm talking so much, I haven't had a chance to read everything that everyone's writing, but I'm going to enjoy it and go through all the comments. All right. If anyone has questions, sounds like everyone's okay. Recommendations of eating fresh for those who work full time. I think, you know, I understand that pain of working full time, and I remember when, except salads, right? You know, the only recommendation I would have is to pack it with you. It's hard, and I remember I had the same problem, and I would talk to Monica G about it, and she would say, you know, take a thermos full of kashaya or something to work, you know, because I would skip lunch. I would skip lunch a lot. Sometimes you work through lunch and you see patients, and I remember she would say, you know, don't ever skip lunch. Don't ever suppress the natural urges of the body. Take a thermos with you. You know, you can eat it. If you take it in the morning and you have it within those 3 hours, it's okay. Take tulsi leaf and offer it. You know, if you have something that's stale, that, you know, that's from the, I mean, let's be practical. We all have refrigerators. I'm not, you know, living in the Himalayas with a loincloth, right? All of us have refrigerators, and that's practical life. So one way of purifying the food is to say these mantras. And if you don't know Sanskrit, say it in your own language. Say it in English or whatever your language is. Just purify it. Just think about it and offer it to your divine, your deity. And that purifies it. That takes away the heaviness and the grossness of the food and makes it sattvic. So, yes, purify with mantras. It's hard, right, living in this time, day and age where we're working all the time, but there are ways around it. So just a quick thought in your mind as you're preparing it, and just a quick acknowledgement. Thank you to Mother Earth or to God will purify that food. Our thoughts are vibrations, yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to stick around and mute myself, but I'm going to stick around and read this chat. It's fantastic.